politics is indeed an everyday encounter for those of us who are powerless, for those of us who are minorities, for those of us whose issues are marginalized and unrepresented. So right from when I was a little girl at Gaza High School, I've been involved in articulating issues of students, issues of women. And so the question about politics, small p, has been a question I've been involved in all my life. Elective politics in Uganda, on the other hand, is what you're talking about. So why now? Why not now? I think that Uganda is going through an exciting time where there's a huge desire for many Ugandans to participate in regime change, to participate in reclaiming for ourselves power as Ugandans. I think for me, in terms of preparation, I have undergone the entire education hierarchy. I am prepared as an academic who has achieved the highest accolades that one can achieve within academia. I've been frustrated by the regime because of oppression. I was kicked out of my job. I have gone through the justice system, and I know how it can be a disappointment to very many Ugandans, especially those without means, those in the opposition or the critical of the president. I have gone to prison, and I know that journey. And like perhaps most of the contestants, I am very prepared. My journey has led me to 46 years where I got a PhD. That's the highest, the apex of education. I went to prison. It's the depth of existence for most human beings. When you're in prison, it's your worst moment. And I think Parliament, for me now, I feel I'm ready to engage, not because of the convictions of another person, but because it is my own conviction that I have a lot to offer. I've been crying desperately for leaders who represent my issues. And instead of criticizing and critiquing forever, I decided to come and participate and offer myself as a leader, because the vacuum has become apparent, particularly for those who do not believe in the current regime. Now, for me, is a time one of political maturity to make decisions for myself based on my experience and the experiences of others around me. I think the social context in which I, as a Kampala-based woman, operates in Uganda, it is a ripe time. Kampala politics is interesting because while we have a woman MP that's provided for in the constitution to represent the district, there's been a huge vacancy, a huge gap, a glaring lack hearing the emancipated voice of the Kampala woman MP. And I think that for me, this is the most strategic time to enter parliament, to enter elective politics, using the woman quota that is given to us, using affirmative action, and make a difference for Ugandans who don't believe in the incumbent regime, using the tools given to us by parliament.
Doctor, your name is so much pronounced in the academia sphere. Now, what makes you leave activism and switch to politics, active politics, to be very specific?
Very quickly, I want to say to you that I don't believe that there's a difference between activism and politics. Very many of us who claim for ourselves an identity as activists enter the space to struggle, to claim, to protest, to agitate for rights that have been denied those for whom they should be free, right? And so activism is actually politics. The dichotomy between an activist and a politician is a fake dichotomy, especially for those of us in the opposition. I squarely place myself in politics as an opposition activist, right? I claim those two identities for myself because activism without understanding that one is struggling for a particular bunch of rights that have been denied is shallow activism. Activism is about grit, hard work, toil, battling, risk. It is a political investment. To say, I'm going to speak for minorities, be they women, be they traders in the arcades, that activism comes from a point of they don't have their entitlements and we are addressing a higher power. That is politics. And so your assumption that I'm leaving activism to enter politics is wrong. I want to disabuse you of it, Semakula, my brother. Semakula, you know very well that a lot of Ugandan politicians, a lot of Baganda politicians were also often Basemako Kilo, Bajunju, Abarana Gentalo, right? That we entered the space of politics as Baganda, really from the warring faction, fighting against colonialists, right? And so many politicians, particularly those of us who are struggling against dictatorial, colonial, authoritarian regimes, are of necessity one, activists, and two, politicians. And so the issue also around being an academic, departing from academia to enter politics, again, is a false dichotomy, right? Because I'm an academic, I have my PhD, it will never leave. I can't say, PhD, I've left you there. I conceptualize and understand and analyze issues as an academic because the academia has prepared me. It has given me a particular set of tools that allow me to strategize and place myself in the political arena as an elite person. I have the privilege of education. I have the privilege of mobilizing around academia, of spreading knowledge, of using knowledge as a weapon. And so I don't enter parliament and say I'm taking off my brain, my PhD, and putting it aside. Actually, I enter parliament, I enter the struggle for elective politics with my brain. It gives me an edge, it gives me an advantage. And so I don't understand why for a long time academics in Uganda have decided to desert the field of politics, right? I feel that we have a big contribution to make. I think that as academic elite people, we have an advantage. We have the power to change things. We have the ability to reason and debate and lobby, which is what we do in parliament. We can understand, internalize, analyze, critique, and criticize the laws, the bills that are tabled. We won't be like those guys who approved Matia, Minister Matia of Finance. He came and read a budget that hadn't been approved. They didn't approve it. We need academics who are used to the rigorous exercise of reading, analyzing, critiquing for ourselves, but also for those we represent in parliament. And so I'm entering parliament as an academic, as an activist, and as a politician. I need all three resources because this is my cutting edge, right? It is my cutting edge. I think that it will be foolhardy, it will be poor strategizing for me to say, I'm going to enter like someone who didn't go to school. I'm entering parliament as a PhD career, postdoc, not just doctorate, postdoc, to use my brain and intellect and my IQ to think through the issues we have in our government, in our governance, in our leadership failures, and make good for Ugandans, because very many PhD holders have decided to put their PhDs on hold until the regime changes. And so I think that for me, it's a good time for academics such as myself who want to use our heads, our knowledge, our training to make a difference for Uganda through parliament.
When you said it's a good time and you've picked nomination forms and
yes,
you've openly showed your position, what solution do you bring for people of Kampala, especially the women you want to represent in parliament? You mentioned picking nomination forms. I didn't just pick. I picked and returned my nomination form from Forum for Democratic Change. As you can see the stamp on that form, I went on the 3rd of July as nominated. I'm running in the primaries for Kampala Woman MP against others in my party who have expressed their interest. Likewise, I went to People Power, my brother Semakula, and I presented my expression of interest forms. Because for me, as an opposition activist, vying for space in Kampala, I realized the importance of both People Power, a pressure group that has risen with a wave of amazing resistance. They've taken on the defiance of my party, FDC, and they're doing something interesting. And so your question, which was what, my brother? It was, what solution do you have for the people of Kampala,
yes,
especially the women you want to represent in parliament?
So I think that the first thing for me is that I bring innovation.
I haven't seen another politician running who has come and been forthright and said, I want to ride on the wave of both people power and my political party, FDC. This is the conceptual clarity I was telling you about. Academics are not like street pedestrian people who enter politics without the refined strategic thinking, critical thinking that is necessary for these things. People power has told us it's not a pressure group. FDC is a political party. And so the very first thing that I bring for people of Kampala is innovation based on clear conceptualizations of the issues disturbing Kampalans. Right? It's the first most important basic thing that I'm bringing my head as a thinker, as a scholar, as an analyst, as a researcher to think through the issues of Kampala as an academic and articulate them as an activist and legislate, create bills as a parliamentarian. You can't beat that. That's the first thing I have to offer. The second thing I want to offer is based on my experience of poverty. I'm not poor because I'm a lazy woman. I'm not poor because I lack skills. I am poor because of oppression and dictatorship and authoritarianism. The university was instructed, commanded. Issue ya jeshi ni moja. Fire Stella Nyanzi. If you want to make money as a university, you want increments as professors. In the negotiation room, they were told to fire me, right? And so, if the university has been captured, as very many other spheres of public life in Uganda had been captured, Semakula, it is important that we have, I've lost the point, it is important that we have people who can analyze, why are we poor? Are we poor because Uganda lacks resources? No. Uganda is filled with a vast array of natural resources that have been stolen away from us. Just as my job at Makerere has been stolen away from me.
So how do you plan
and
to
so
reinstate
the poverty question which I experience is one I want to address in Parliament. How? One of the functions of parliamentarians is oversight and budgeting. That's the second one. I want to participate actively, whether I'm on the budget committee or not, in budget making as a member of parliament, to redress the poverty that I've experienced, not because I'm poor, not because I come from poor lineage, but because of dictatorship. The dictator has infiltrated parliament and executive with those who won't think for the poor. When I enter parliament, I want to redress this issue of poverty through budgeting that does not cater for the public, the vast majority of public. How can we have a budget that is concentrated on defense and security and not public health and education, for example? The third thing I want to offer, so one is redressing the issues around poverty and corruption. That's the second point. The third issue, I think, for me, is really representing marginalized voices, women's issues. How many women's issues are in parliament struggling to either be assented to as bills of parliament or even just to be drafted? We have very many bills: the divorce and marriage bill, the sexual violence bill. There are so many bills in parliament that would cater for marginalized women, poor women, unemployed youth that have stagnated. There are also bad laws that have been passed by a corrupt parliament that has a majority that prefers to work for the incumbent regime. POMA, the Public Order Management Act, will not allow opposition members to meet and plan or organize protest and dissent. I want to go into parliament. The CMA, the Computer Misuse Act, which I was arrested and charged under, convicted as well, and then acquitted. Those bad laws, there's a long list of bad laws, which I want to enter parliament, review, redress, bring private members' bills to change, modify, amend, because those laws don't work for Ugandans such as myself who refuse to praise a dictator. Those laws work for an incumbent regime that is stealing from us. And so that is legislation, representation. I've talked about budgeting. What haven't I told you about? Issues of minority people, oversight. Oversight is an important role.
I think perhaps that unlike very many other women who have been taught to be nice girls, Baganda girls Semakula are taught to sit, put our legs together, look down, never look at people, be humble. I am not that type of woman. I will be polite, I will comply, I will work with you as long as you work with me and protect my interests, protect my good. The minute the line is crossed, particularly by members of the executive, starting with Dictator Museveni all the way down, I am a woman who will come and fight. You have seen me fighting, I will keep fighting, and when I enter parliament, because I am mandated by the rules of procedure, by the constitution, as a parliamentarian, to offer oversight, and I will do it to the executive. This passing of, I don't know, statutory bills, statutory budgets, just to please the executive. I want allowing SFC guys to come because the SFC is sent into parliament by the executive, the president. I'll say, no. We shall not allow the executive to abuse parliament during my regime. I bring a voice, I bring disgust, I bring discontent, I bring the refusal to be appreciative. Women are expected to be appreciative of Yoweri Museveni because he brought us from the village, I don't know, from the back door and brought us to the front door. I am not that type of woman. I am not that type of woman. I am the sort of woman who will come and say, no, bang my shoe, ta.
Yes, it has been clear that you recently resigned the other stand from your job in Makerere.
Nja kulekana kwama nnyo okulekana nja kukwata engoma bweneegaana nina akaleega nga nkajjamu omuntu alowooza nti ngenda kubeera Kampala mbeere Kampala nsekere Kampala tamusobola.
Our power! People power!
One Uganda!
One people!
One people!
One Uganda!
Teri kuzikiza!